Every self-help guru who told you to fight your negative thoughts, to force positive thinking, to push through your mental barriers, they've been lying to you. Not intentionally, but they've been teaching you to wage war against the very part of you that's trying to save your life. Right now, millions of people are exhausting themselves in mental battles they can never win, pushing harder against thoughts that push back stronger, fighting emotions that grow fiercer with every attack. The multi-billion-dollar industry built on mind over matter has created more mental casualties than victories. What if everything you've been taught about changing your mind is not just wrong, but actively keeping you trapped? What if the very act of trying to fix your mind is what's breaking it? There's a shocking truth that most people will spend their entire lives avoiding. Right now, in this very moment. You are not in control of your mind the way you think you are. You push, you force, you demand change from yourself. And what happens? The very thing you're trying to fix fights back harder. The anxiety grows stronger. The depression digs deeper. The habits grip tighter. This is not weakness. This is not failure. This is your mind telling you something profound that you've been too busy to hear. 2 years ago, I met a man who seemed to have conquered life. Richard was 45 years old, running 3 successful companies, married to a brilliant woman, father to 2 exceptional children. From the outside, his life was a masterpiece. But when he sat across from me in that conference room after my seminar, his hands were trembling. I can't sleep, he said. I have tried everything. Meditation apps, sleeping pills, exercise routines, strict schedules. The harder I try to shut down my mind at night, the more it races. I feel like I'm at war with myself. This is the great deception of our time, the belief that the mind is an enemy to be conquered rather than a partner to be understood. We've been taught to treat our thoughts and emotions like unruly employees who need to be disciplined into submission. But what if I told you that this very approach is what keeps you trapped? What if the solution isn't in the forcing, but in the understanding? When you try to force your mind to change, you create resistance. It's like trying to push a door that opens by pulling. The harder you push, the more stuck you become. Every time you say, I shouldn't think this way, or I need to stop feeling like this, you're adding another layer of conflict to an already complicated system. Your mind isn't broken. It's responding exactly the way it was designed to respond when under attack, even when that attack comes from you. Richard's story didn't end in that conference room. Over the next 6 months, he discovered something revolutionary. Instead of fighting his racing thoughts at night, he began to listen to them. Not to obey them, but to understand them. Those thoughts weren't random. They were messages. His mind wasn't his enemy. It was desperately trying to tell him something about the pressure he was putting on himself, about the fears he was ignoring during his busy days. The metaphor I want you to hold is this. Consider how we approach physical pain. When your body hurts, you don't just take painkillers and ignore it. You investigate, you ask questions. You seek to understand what your body is telling you. Yet with mental and emotional pain, we do the opposite. We suppress, we deny, we medicate, we distract. We do everything except the one thing that actually works. We refuse to understand. The turning point in my own life came when I realized I had been my own worst enemy. For years, I battled with anxiety about public speaking. Yes, even those of us who speak for a living face these challenges. I tried positive affirmations, visualization techniques, breathing exercises. Some helped temporarily, but the anxiety always returned. It wasn't until I stopped fighting and started understanding that everything changed. What was my anxiety trying to tell me? It was revealing my deep fear of not being enough, of disappointing people, of being exposed as imperfect. Once I understood this, once I acknowledged these fears without judgment, something miraculous happened. The anxiety didn't disappear, but it transformed. It became information rather than affliction. It became a teacher rather than a tormentor. This is the fundamental shift that changes everything. When you stop seeing your mind as something to be fixed and start seeing it as something to be understood, you move from conflict to collaboration. You stop being at war with yourself and start being in partnership with the most powerful tool you possess. The world tells you to be strong, to push through, to overcome. But true strength isn't in the forcing, it's in the understanding. It's in having the courage to ask why your mind operates the way it does. It's in being willing to listen to the messages hidden within your struggles right now. Whatever you're battling, whether it's fear, doubt, anger, addiction, or any other mental challenge, your mind is not your enemy. It's a sophisticated system trying to protect you, serve you, and communicate with you in the only way it knows how. The tragedy is that most people never learn its language. They spend their lives in translation errors, misunderstanding the very signals that could set them free. This isn't about positive thinking or pretending problems don't exist. This is about developing a revolutionary relationship with your own consciousness. It's about recognizing that every thought pattern, every emotional response, every mental habit exists for a reason. When you understand the reason, you gain the power, not through force, but through comprehension. The path forward isn't through the battlefield, it's through the classroom of your own mind. Your mind is constructing reality every single second. And most people have no idea it's happening. Right now, as you hear these words, your brain is filtering through millions of bits of information, selecting what to notice, what to ignore, what to emphasize, what to minimize. You're not seeing the world as it is. You're seeing the world as your mind has programmed itself to see it. This programming didn't happen overnight. It's been building since the day you were born. 3 years ago, I encountered a teacher named Sarah who had been in education for 20 years. She came to me defeated, ready to quit the profession she once loved. There's this student, she said, Marcus, brilliant kid, but completely unreachable. I've tried every teaching method, every disciplinary approach, every motivational technique. Nothing works. He just sits there, detached, refusing to engage. Sarah had exhausted herself trying to force a breakthrough. What she hadn't done was understand the architecture of Marcus's mind. The human mind operates on 3 distinct levels. And until you grasp this, you'll keep banging your head against invisible walls. The first level is the conscious mind, the part you're aware of right now. The voice in your head, the thoughts you can control. This represents maybe 10% of your mental activity. The second level is the subconscious, the automatic programs, the learned behaviors, the emotional patterns that run without your direct input. This is about 60%. The third level, the deepest level, is what I call the blueprint level, the core beliefs about yourself and the world that got wired in during your earliest years. This is the other 30%. And it's running the show. Sarah's mistake was trying to reach Marcus at the conscious level, when the real barrier existed at the blueprint level. When she finally understood this, when she stopped trying to force Marcus to learn and started understanding why he couldn't, everything shifted. She discovered that Marcus had internalized a belief from early childhood: when I try and fail, people I love get disappointed and leave. His detachment wasn't defiance, it was protection. Here's what most people don't understand. You cannot solve an emotional problem with logic. You cannot think your way out of a feeling. Yet this is exactly what we're taught to do. Feel anxious. Think positive thoughts. Feel depressed. List things you're grateful for. Feel angry. Count to 10. These aren't useless techniques, but they're surface level solutions to deep level problems. It's like trying to fix a leaking pipe by mopping the floor. You might manage the symptom, but the source remains untouched. The architecture of your mind is built on patterns, neural pathways that have been strengthened through repetition. Every time you respond to a situation in a familiar way, you deepen that groove. It's like water flowing down a hillside. It naturally follows the path of least resistance. Carving deeper channels with each rain, your thoughts and emotions follow these channels automatically. This is why willpower fails. You're trying to redirect a river with your bare hands. But here's the revelation. When you understand how these patterns formed, when you see the blueprint clearly, you gain access to the control room, not to force change, but to create new pathways. Sarah didn't try to break down Marcus's walls. She understood why they were built. She created an environment where trying didn't equal potential abandonment. Slowly, Marcus began to engage, not because Sarah forced him, but because she understood him. Your mind has defense mechanisms that activate the moment you try to force change. These aren't flaws in the system, they're features. They're designed to protect you from perceived threats, even when those threats are your own attempts at improvement. The person who can't stop procrastinating, their mind might be protecting them from the fear of judgment. The person who can't maintain relationships, their mind might be shielding them from the vulnerability of deep connection. The person who can't break free from negative thinking, their mind might be keeping them in familiar territory because the unknown feels more dangerous than the pain they know. I once worked with a CEO who couldn't delegate. Everyone told him he was a control freak, that he needed to trust his team, that he was burning himself out. He knew all of this logically, but knowledge at the conscious level couldn't override the blueprint. Through understanding, not forcing, we uncovered that early in his career. Delegation had led to a catastrophic failure that nearly destroyed his first company. His mind had created an equation. Delegation equals disaster. Until we understood this architecture, no amount of leadership training could help. The patterns in your mind aren't random. They're responses to experiences, adaptations to environment, strategies for survival. Some served you well in the past, but have become obstacles in the present. Others never served you at all, but were installed by well-meaning people who didn't know better. The key isn't to judge these patterns as good or bad, but to understand their origin and purpose. When you understand the architecture of your mind, you stop being its victim and start being its architect. You realize that the building can be renovated, but not by demolition, by understanding the original blueprints and creating new additions. You can't tear down a lifetime of neural pathways overnight, but you can build new ones alongside the old. This is why understanding trumps forcing every single time. Force creates resistance, understanding creates possibility. Force exhausts you. Understanding empowers you. Force is temporary. Understanding is transformational. The moment you shift from trying to fix your mind to trying to understand it, you move from the problem to the solution. You stop being the warrior in an endless battle and become the student in an incredible classroom. The classroom of your own consciousness. Every emotion you feel is a message written in a language you were never taught to read. We spend years learning mathematics, science, and literature. But nobody teaches us the most important language of all, the language of our own minds. Fear isn't just fear. Anger isn't just anger. Anxiety isn't just anxiety. These are precise communications from the deepest parts of your being, and until you learn to interpret them correctly, you keep missing the message. Dr. James Chen was one of the most skilled neurosurgeons in the country for 15 years. His hands had saved countless lives, performed operations other surgeons wouldn't dare attempt. Then one morning, everything changed. During a routine procedure, his hands began to shake. Nothing went wrong, the patient was fine. But James couldn't forget that tremor. The next surgery, the shaking was worse within 6 months. This brilliant surgeon couldn't hold a scalpel steady. Every test came back normal. Physically, nothing was wrong. The problem was in the language his mind was speaking. Emotions are not your enemies, they're your translators. They're trying to tell you something about your internal state that your conscious mind hasn't recognized yet. When James finally learned to decode what his shaking hands were saying, the message was clear. You're carrying the weight of every life you couldn't save. The tremor wasn't weakness. It was 15 years of suppressed grief and guilt finally demanding to be heard. Here's what changes everything. Instead of fighting your emotions, what if you interviewed them? What if you treated anxiety not as something to eliminate, but as a messenger to understand? I'm not talking about wallowing in negative feelings or letting them control you. I'm talking about developing emotional intelligence at its deepest level. The ability to decode the signals your mind sends through your body when fear shows up. Most people have two responses: fight it or run from it. But fear is information. It's telling you something feels threatening. The question isn't how to eliminate fear, it's what is the threat. Sometimes the threat is real and present. Sometimes it's an old danger that no longer exists. Sometimes it's an imagined catastrophe that will never happen. But you'll never know which until you listen to the message. Anger is another misunderstood messenger. Society teaches us anger is bad, destructive, something to suppress. But anger is your boundary system alerting you that something important to you is being violated. The executive who explodes at minor inconveniences isn't really angry about the coffee being wrong. He's angry that his life feels out of control. The mother who snaps at her children isn't really angry about toys on the floor. She's angry that her needs have been invisible for too long. The wisdom hidden in resistance is perhaps the most profound discovery you can make. When you find yourself resisting something, a change, an opportunity, a relationship, that resistance contains intelligence. It's not random. Your mind is detecting something your conscious awareness hasn't caught yet. The person who can't commit to relationships might be sensing patterns similar to past betrayal. The entrepreneur who won't expand their business might be protecting themselves from a repeat of previous failure. Here's the paradox that transforms everything. The more you fight your thoughts and emotions, the stronger they become. It's like trying not to think of a pink elephant. The very act of trying not to think about it makes it dominate your mind. But when you acknowledge the pink elephant, when you observe it without judgment, something magical happens. It loses its power over you. Not because you forced it away, but because you understood its presence. James, our surgeon, didn't overcome his shaking hands by fighting harder or practicing more. He overcame them by understanding their message. He created space to grieve the patients he couldn't save. He acknowledged the crushing responsibility he'd been carrying alone. He learned that his hands weren't betraying him. They were trying to save him from a burden that was becoming unbearable. The language your mind speaks is sophisticated and nuanced. Depression might be saying, the life you're living isn't aligned with who you really are. Procrastination might be whispering, you're afraid of being judged for your real capabilities. Chronic fatigue could be announcing, you've been running on empty, ignoring your basic needs for too long. This isn't about making excuses or avoiding responsibility. It's about developing a translator's skill with your own internal experience. When you become fluent in the language of your mind, you stop being confused by its messages. You stop treating symptoms and start addressing causes. You stop being reactive and start being responsive. The path forward isn't in silencing these messengers. It's in becoming multilingual in the languages of your own consciousness. Every emotion, every pattern, every resistance is part of a conversation your mind is trying to have with you. The question is, are you finally ready to listen? When understanding dawns, space opens up inside you. Space for real change to occur. Not the forced change that snaps back like a rubber band, but the organic transformation that happens when a seed finally gets the right conditions to grow. This space is where miracles happen, where old patterns lose their grip, where new possibilities emerge naturally. The principle of gentle awareness revolutionizes how we approach our minds. Instead of harsh judgment, we bring curiosity. Instead of immediate action, we bring patient observation. Like a scientist studying a fascinating phenomenon, we become interested in our own patterns without needing to fix them immediately. This shift from judge to observer changes everything. Maria was an Olympic-level swimmer whose career was being destroyed by performance anxiety. Every time she stood on the starting block, her mind would flood with thoughts of failure. Coaches tried everything: visualization, positive self-talk, pressure training. Nothing worked. The harder she tried to control her anxiety, the worse it became. Her times were suffering. Sponsors were pulling out. She was ready to quit. What saved Maria's career wasn't a new technique or mental trick. It was understanding. Instead of fighting the anxiety, she began observing it with genuine curiosity. When did it start? What exactly was she afraid of? What physical sensations accompanied it? She discovered something surprising. The anxiety wasn't about winning or losing. It was about disappointing her father, who had sacrificed everything for his swimming career. Once this understanding emerged, Maria didn't need to force herself to be confident. The anxiety began transforming on its own. It became a reminder of how much she was loved, how much support she had, rather than a threat to her performance. She learned to swim with the anxiety rather than against it. Within 6 months, she was setting personal records. Rewiring through comprehension works, because you're not fighting the existing circuitry. You're creating new pathways alongside the old ones. The brain is remarkably plastic, constantly capable of forming new connections. But these connections form through understanding and experience, not through force and willpower. Think of it like a garden path. The old path, your current pattern, is well worn, easy to follow. You can't instantly erase it, but you can create a new path by walking it repeatedly. At first, the new path is barely visible. The grass springs back. It takes effort to stay on it, but with consistent use, it becomes clearer, easier, more natural. Eventually, the new path becomes the default, while the old one grows over from disuse. Curious observation is your most powerful tool. When a pattern emerges, anxiety, anger, procrastination, whatever it might be, instead of immediately trying to change it, observe it. Where do you feel it in your body? What thoughts accompany it? What happens right before it appears? What need is it trying to meet? This observation isn't passive. It's actively gathering intelligence about your own operating system. The creation of new neural pathways happens through consistent, gentle practice. Not forced repetition, but mindful engagement. Each time you choose understanding over forcing. Each time you respond with curiosity instead of judgment, you strengthen new neural connections. You're literally rewiring your brain through comprehension. The transformation process isn't linear. Some days the old patterns will dominate. Some moments you'll forget everything you've learned. This isn't failure, it's part of the journey. Even these setbacks become opportunities for understanding when approached with gentle awareness. What emerges from this process is profound. A mind that's not conquered, but partnered with. You stop being at war with yourself and start being in collaboration with your most powerful ally. Change comes not from forcing doors open, but from understanding why they were closed. Living from understanding isn't just a concept, it becomes your daily practice. Your way of being in the world. Every morning when you wake up, instead of battling your mind into submission, you greet it as a partner. You listen to its concerns, decode its signals, work with its wisdom rather than against its patterns. Elena Rodriguez was a single mother of 3 who lived in a constant state of chaos. Her home was a battlefield. children fighting, homework battles, bedtime wars. She tried every parenting book, every discipline method, every reward system. The more rules she enforced, the more rebellion she faced. The stricter she became, the more her children pulled away. By the time she came to my workshop, she was exhausted, defeated, convinced she was failing as a mother. I've tried everything, she told me, tears streaming down her face. I set clear boundaries. I followed through with consequences. I stay consistent, but nothing changes. My house is still chaos. My children still don't listen. I feel like I'm losing them. Elena's transformation began when she stopped trying to control her children and started understanding the family system. Through gentle observation, she noticed something profound. Her children's worst behavior happened when she was most stressed. Their chaos wasn't defiance, it was a reflection of her internal state. They were responding to her energy, not her words. She began practicing understanding with herself first. When anxiety rose about bills or work, instead of pushing through, she acknowledged it. When frustration built about messy rooms, she explored what was really bothering her. The fear of being judged as a bad mother. As she developed partnership with her own mind, something miraculous happened in her home. Her eldest son, 15-year-old Carlos, was the first to change. Without Elena forcing new rules, he began helping with dishes. When she asked why, he said, "You seem different, Mom. Calmer, like you actually see us." Her daughter started doing homework without battles. The youngest stopped the nightly meltdowns. Eleanor wasn't using new parenting techniques. She was embodying understanding. When Carlos slammed his door, instead of demanding respect, she later asked with genuine curiosity, "What happened before you got so angry?" She discovered he was being bullied at school. When her daughter procrastinated on projects, instead of lecturing about responsibility, Eleanor explored what made starting feel so hard. They uncovered perfectionism paralysis together. The ripple effect was profound. As Elena's relationship with her own mind transformed, every relationship in her life shifted. Her children felt seen rather than controlled. Her ex-husband became more cooperative. Her work performance improved because she wasn't exhausted from internal battles. She was living from understanding. And it changed everything. Building a life of mental freedom doesn't mean you never struggle. Elena still has difficult days. Her children still test boundaries. But now she has a different relationship with these challenges. She sees them as information, not failures. She partners with difficulty instead of fighting it. Sustainable change comes from this kind of deep understanding. It's not about perfect thoughts or constant happiness. It's about developing such a profound partnership with your own consciousness that even your struggles become teachers. You stop needing to control because you understand. You stop forcing because you trust the process. The vision I want to leave you with is this: a life where your mind is your greatest ally, where every emotion is a teacher, where every pattern is understood rather than judged. A life where you wake up curious about what you'll discover about yourself today rather than dreading another battle. A life where transformation happens naturally because you've created the conditions for growth through understanding. This isn't just about individual healing. When you live from understanding, you become a force for transformation in the world. Your peace creates peace. Your understanding invites understanding. Your partnership with your own mind shows others what's possible. You become living proof that there's another way, not the way of force, but the way of comprehension, not the path of war, but the path of wisdom